Good evening, everyone. My name is Rita Hicks, and on behalf of the League of Women Voters of Houston Education Fund, I'd like to welcome you to Conversations with the Candidates. This series, we're very excited to be providing to you conversations with a number of the candidates that are going to be on your Harris County ballot this election season. Last week, we heard from the candidates who are running for County Board of Trustees for the Department of Education of Harris County. If you missed that conversation, you can find it on the Houston Media Source YouTube channel or the League of Women Voters of Houston Vimeo channel. Tonight, I'm very excited to be talking to both candidates for Harris County Attorney. Before we hop into that one, I just want to mention we have a couple of other great conversations coming up. You can check our calendar to figure out which races are coming when. Next week, I'm very excited to be providing a conversation in public affairs, public access around demystifying the judicial races that are on your ballot. We'll hear from a panel of experts about what all the different courts are that are going to be on your ballot and where to find nonpartisan information about the candidates. Tonight, we're going to be hearing from the two candidates who are on your ballot for Harris County County Attorney. Just as a reminder, we always invite all candidates for the position to participate, and the time that we have for tonight will be divided equally between the two candidates. So before we get started, let me tell you just a little bit about the position of Harris County Attorney. The Harris County Attorney's Office actually represents Harris County, its departments, its elected and appointed officials, and employees in all civil matters that involve county business. This includes departments such as the Harris County Hospital District, the Harris County Flood Control District, the Harris County Appraisal Review Board, and the Greater 911 Energy Network, which are all separate legal entities but housed within Harris County, and the Harris County Attorney's Office has responsibility for all of them. Some of the responsibilities of the Harris County Attorney's Office include using civil enforcement actions to protect neighborhoods, clean up the environment, and shut down illegal enterprises, protecting our children and elderly through representation of state and county agencies, defending Harris County when lawsuits are filed, pursuing claims and collecting revenue for the county when it's owed money, and advising our elected officials as they prepare contracts for the county. In addition, the Harris County Attorney's Office also oversees the state of Texas in mental health commitments and child protective services cases, assisting Harris County in administration of guardian programs, which care for elderly and disabled individuals who are unable to care for themselves. So, a wide array of responsibilities for our county attorney. So the first of the two candidates we're going to hear from tonight is Mr. Jim Leitner. Let me tell you just a few things about Mr. Leitner before we hop into some questions with him. Mr. Leitner is a native Houstonian and father of 8. He's married to Michelle Smith Leitner, who is also an attorney, and he received his law degree from the University of Houston in 1975. Jim has 13 years of experience as an Excuse me, I am talking too fast. Jim has 13 years of experience as an assistant district attorney, and he served 4 of those years as first assistant in Harris County. He has over 20 years of experience as an attorney in private practice and served 2 years as general counsel to the Harris County Sheriff. Jim also served 26 years in the U.S. Coast Guard and retired as a commander. Twice he served as the commanding officer of reserve units. So Jim, thank you so much for joining us tonight. Welcome.
Thank you for giving me this opportunity.
Absolutely. I'm very excited that the voters are going to get to hear what you have to say. So to start off, can you just talk to me briefly about the qualifications that you think uniquely situate you to be our county attorney?
Well, as you've said, I've been an attorney here in Harris County for 41 years. The county attorney is a person who has to lead an office of about 200 people, 100 attorneys and 100 support staff. It has to be someone who is a leader, that has administrative abilities. I believe that my time in the military that has taught me how to build reserve units up from the top to the bottom. And I was an E1 at one time, worked my way to E5, and I was an O1 all the way to O5. So I've seen all of it, right down the line like that. I understand the need to get the right people in, to train those individuals, to give them the opportunity, and then stand behind them once they do the job. I've also had that same opportunity in the public sector with the district attorney's office. I've been the lowest man on the totem pole there to the number 2 person in the office. And I believe with that experience that I have, I can take the county attorney's office and lead it further to do much more than it's doing now.
Thank you. Speaking about the office resources, you've already described the personnel resources that are available in the Harris County Attorney's Office. My question to you is that do you believe that office is sufficiently resourced? And if not, where would you augment the resources of that office?
I don't believe anyone in an office, whether it was in the military or it was in the DA's office or any place, ever believes that the people give them enough money. But there's something that's unique about the county attorney's office that I don't think the public knows. And they have access to what they refer to as the Toll Road Slush Fund. And in the last 4 years, it had about $6.5 million infused into that fund that the county attorney at his discretion can use for the benefit of that office. If they need more money to train individuals, they need more money to make it more attractive for good people to come in, the money ought to be used for that. And I would do that. I wouldn't use it for paying outside counsel to do the work for the office.
Okay, thank you very much. So talking about the county, it's one of the largest in the country, very diverse, with equally diverse needs. So as county attorney, you do have to sort of focus in priority areas. And I'm curious if you can tell me what you think your top 3 focus areas would be as county attorney.
Well, number one, when I was general counsel to the sheriff, first thing I wondered is why he needed a general counsel, because they have the county attorney's office. And then I looked and saw that the clerk, civil clerk, the district clerk, everybody just in the county gets their own lawyers. And when I talked to everybody, it was because they wanted someone who they believed could meet their individual needs that they could go to get advice. I think that the county attorney's office should be there and should be available to all the different agencies, so that wouldn't be needed. My first priority would be to let all the elected officials and their offices know that the county attorney's office wants to know what their needs are and will fill those needs. Secondly, I believe that the people in the office need to have sufficient training. If you looked at the Houston Chronicle yesterday, they talked about the bail bond lawsuit, a very governmental lawsuit. It's people saying that we think that the judges set the bails too high. It's not even asking to get a money judgment on anybody. And instead of handling that, it gets farmed out to counsel, and the counsel it gets farmed out to, one of the lawyers is getting paid $610 an hour. The other one is getting paid $540 an hour. I mean, that is insane for doing county business. When I was the number 2 person in the DA's office, handling the administration of 600 people, I made about $98 an hour. I mean, for them to get over $1,100 an hour for every hour that the 2 of them put into that lawsuit and then have to pay for their staffs, is just unreasonable. You wouldn't need that if you used the money that was in that office to train the individuals to be at their very best, so they would be on top of the game and everybody would know when they came to court, they are the ones who have the expertise. Lastly, I think that the office needs to be transparent. I bet you can walk around any mall in town and say, what does the county attorney's office do? And they would tell you, well, they prosecute cases. You say, no, I didn't say the district attorney's office, the county attorney's office. Most people don't know what the county attorney's office does, and that's because everything it does under the radar. It needs to be transparent so the public knows what it does. They ought to have a website that shows how they spend that $6.5 million, shows what cases they're handling, what cases they're farming out that they're not handling, and they know exactly what they're doing. It ought to have a website, too, that lets the public say, when we have a problem, call and let you know that so you can discuss it with them to see whether the county attorney's office can help them. It needs to be more efficient and it needs to be more available.
Well, you've anticipated one of my questions having to do with transparency. So I think, if you don't mind, I'd like to ask a follow-up on the first focus area that you mentioned. Talking about having the county sort of be a one-stop resource for the various offices in the county. What kind of process do you think would need to be put in place in order to undertake what would that consolidation look like, do you think?
You would probably need to have lawyers at all the different offices so they could understand what their needs were. I knew at the sheriff's office, when the sheriff had a need, if you would call the county attorney's office and ask the question, by the time you got the answer, the need is already gone. It has to be somebody that's on the spot that can answer those questions. They need to be there long enough so they understand what the needs of that agency are, and then they can train them to be able to function the way they should be functioning. They ought to be like a general counsel in any business, to aid the elected official and everyone in that office. I think that's the availability, and then the expertise to handle is what it needs.
All right, thank you. So I mentioned when I was educating our voters that mental health is one of the, or overseeing some of the mental health processes is one of the purviews of Harris County Attorney's Office, and it's a significant issue, not just in Harris County, but in our state as a whole. Texas mental health is a significant issue. I'm curious, what role do you think the County Attorney's Office should play in helping to maximize mental health resources that are at the county's disposal?
I can answer that question by making it a little broader than that. I have worked in the system for 41 years, and I've worked with people with mental disabilities and mental needs, especially in the criminal justice part of it. This county's come a long way from where it was, and it still has a long way to go. But there needs to be more coordination between all the different agencies that have to deal with individuals that have those problems. There's many times you have a person who has a criminal problem that also needs to have a guardian appointed. Today, the interplay between the two different offices, or all the different offices, is not like it should be. The example that I give mostly when I talk about this, and it doesn't have to do with mental health, but I'm sorry to tell you this, but an example is why there needs to be more coordination in the county. Two things. One is, for example, when police agencies get in trouble, it's usually because of use of force issues. When I was in the sheriff's office, they asked me to rewrite their use of force policy, and I started looking at the city and all the constables, and everybody has a different use of force policy. And I mean, they're different. The same laws apply to everybody on use of force. It doesn't change from a constable to a sheriff to a metro police officer to the city of Houston. There ought to be coordination to where there's one use of force policy that you've tried and tested in federal court, that you know the policy is good, it protects the individuals, and then you can work on the training for that. A prime example too is that fiasco they had in Precinct 4 where all the evidence got destroyed. And now they're saying, well, maybe we ought to have a central depository that everybody works together. We don't need there to be a disaster to do what's readily apparent that we need to do. There needs to be more coordination. Every county agency has the same lawyer. It's the county attorney's office. The county attorney ought to be the moving person to get all those agencies working together. We could be more efficient, and even though we'll never have all the needs, all the equipment that we need to help the mentally ill, we'll do a better job than we're doing.
All right, thank you. So, and this is somewhat related because child welfare cases are also some of the more sensitive tasks that are within the county attorney's oversight purview. I'm curious what you believe the county attorney's office currently does well in handling these child welfare cases, and what it could be doing better.
You mean like the CPS cases, things
Yes,
like
sir.
that? Well, unfortunately, I think that probably the public opinion of CPS has been very negative for the last decade. And it amazes me that the county attorney can be the lawyer for CPS and avoid all that negativity. Recently, a judge ordered CPS officials to read the Constitution and to read the Family Code before they came back to court. Well, that should never happen. The lawyers should be teaching those individuals the law, the Constitution and the Family Code. I mean, there needs to be more work at the Harris County Attorney's level. If you're representing those individuals, when they go to court, if they do a bad job, you did a bad job. Mm-hmm. If you pull a child out of a family when it shouldn't have been pulled out, it should be the lawyer's fault as much as it is the agency's fault, because you need to know your case when you go in there. And I think much more effort needs to be put into that area of the county attorney's office than is presently there. I believe that's where you could use that $6.5 million to bring someone in who is really good at working in those areas and have them revamp that entire section to handle it to the betterment of all of our children.
Right, thank you. So shifting gears just a little bit, one of the major political lightning rods this election season is immigration, which is not in the purview of the county attorney's office, just to be clear. However, one significant feature of Harris County is our population of undocumented citizens. And that's just simply a reality that our county attorney's office has to deal with in the provision of services. So my question for you is, what do you think, what is your position on how the county attorney should address the needs of undocumented citizens living in Harris County?
Well, when it's dealing with immigration issues, the county attorney needs to step back and stay out of it. I think we have a real problem with everybody wanting to get into the fray, and then when they finally say, okay, now do something about it, well, it's the federal government's job. Leave that to the federal government. You know, for all the agencies that the county attorney works with that help people, whether they're documented, undocumented, citizens, or whatever, the county attorney needs to work with all those agencies to do a better job.
Okay, thank you. So every county in the country has challenges collecting money that it's owed, whether we're talking about liens or taxes, judgments, levies, and certainly Harris County is no exception. And given how large it is, those challenges are pretty dispersed. So I am curious, do you think that collections matters should be a high priority for the county attorney's office? And if so, in either case, how do you think those should be tackled?
Absolutely, the collections should be a high priority. Every day when I get on the HOV lane, you see people get on there that one person to a car and they shoot out in front of you like that, and you think, well, golly, they ought to be fined and somebody ought to be collecting those fines. Well, there's a lot more to that in the county than just the people on the toll roads. But as an example, I would take the toll roads. You know, the Harris County Attorney's Office used to handle the collection of those cases. But now it's farmed out to another agency that has been paid over $33 million over the last 4 years. That's money that could be saving me from having to pay taxes. You know, and the county attorney, you know, collecting is a lot of work. It's paper intensive, it takes a lot of time, but it doesn't take a rocket scientist to do collection work. It just takes people who are willing to work, put the mechanisms together for that collection. The county attorney's office ought to be doing that so the people of county get the best, best ability to use that money once it comes in and not pay it to some outside firm. I think that's one of the areas that the county attorney's office has just walked away from, that they need to go back and rethink that.
So I have a follow-up, not about collections in particular, but we've talked about a couple of different examples that you provided where you think the county attorney's office staff itself should be handling matters rather than farming them out. So can you talk a little bit more for the voters at home about what you think the appropriate role is for outside counsel in assisting the county attorney and how decisions should be made about what stays in-house and what you get extra help on as a county attorney?
You would not need outside counsel, but in a few situations. One is that you're not competent to handle the lawsuit. Number two is you're too lazy to handle the lawsuit. And number three would be there's some legal reason, like an actual conflict of interest, that you cannot handle the lawsuit. I think too often the cases are put out because it's tough. You know, they don't really want to handle it. They may have the expertise, or they don't trust that their people have the expertise. But that's where you ought to be training the individuals to say, hey, we should never have to farm out an eminent domain case. That's government business. We ought to be the resident experts in this county on eminent domain. It should never have to be farmed out to anybody else. Other lawsuits, like the bail bond case, it's ridiculous that you have to farm that out to someone else. A lot of times when you farm a case out to someone else, they work from the area of, I want to just maximize the money damages. And there are times that, like, for example, the Volkswagen case, where, you know, if you want to maximize your money damages, you sue Volkswagen and you sue all the dealers in town too. Well, the dealers in town didn't cause this problem. The problem was caused by Volkswagen. If you're looking at it just from a county standpoint, you say, those dealers are county residents too. We don't need to be going after them. Go after the one who caused the problem. When you handle the case from the county, you may look at a lawsuit differently than outside counsel looks at it. And you certainly don't drag it out so you can get more hours into it if you're doing it in the county attorney's office. So I think that the cases that you farm out at the beginning of your term may be quite a few, but the public has a right to expect that you got that money, you train your individuals, you work with them so they can handle those cases, and then you do those cases. Can you imagine right now if every time a capital murder case happened in Harris County, they farmed it out, the district attorney's office didn't handle it? The people in this county wouldn't stand for that. They'd say, why do we have a district attorney's office? They ought to be saying the same thing about the county attorney's office.
Thank you. So the county attorney, as we mentioned at the beginning of the hour, is responsible for a wide range of civil enforcement actions for the county, everything from environmental issues all the way down to shutting down illegal enterprises. And what I'm curious about is, as county attorney, what kinds of enforcement actions do you think should have the highest priority?
Well, I believe that when it comes to what enforcement action should have the highest priority is the quasi-criminal situations that you have, the ones that you have, like, for example, the gangs. When I was in the DA's office, we did a gang injunction at Haverstock Hills, and it took a long time to do it. We got the county, the citizens of that neighborhood involved, the businesses involved, the police involved, everybody involved to know what we were planning on doing before we did it. It takes time and it takes a lot of effort. The South Lawn injunction that the county attorney's office did blew up in their face. Then they dropped it midstream, and the people that wanted to see it happen were all mad. Why do you file this and get us all riled up on doing this and then just drop it? And the other people thought it was discriminatory and said, why do you do it in the first place? If you do handle those things correctly, you can do a great job for the citizens of this county. And I think that the county attorneys, he's never going to be able to replace what the police do and other individuals do like that, and the other agencies that's their main focus. But the county attorney's office can come in and shut down and work to help shut down areas and shut down illegal enterprises that are going on, along with the police, the DA's office, and any other agency that's involved.
Great. So actually my next question is a little bit of a drill down on what you've just been mentioning, because I think one of the things Harris County residents are least proud of is the fact that we happen to be a significant hub for trafficking, particularly human trafficking, but also drug trafficking in the state and nationwide. And so it sounds to me like you do believe that there's a role in the county attorney's office in helping to address those issues. And I'm wondering if you can talk a little bit more about what the county attorney's office's role should be in specifically the two illegal enterprises of drug trafficking and human trafficking.
If you have that coordination always with the police, the district attorney's office, the county attorney's office like that, and the police are saying, we have this problem and we're tackling it. The DA's office is filing the cases and they say, we're getting the convictions. They're coming out of this club, they're coming out of this business, they're coming out of whatever like that. And then the county attorney's office is the 1, 2, 3 punch. Should always be there to look at those things. And it's a lot easier to do that against an establishment than it is to do it against a neighborhood. And they ought to really be focusing on those establishments that, cantinas that do human trafficking, the ones that are thriving in Harris County, have done it for a long time. When they know that and they can make the elements there that they can prove, they ought to go after every one of them. Same way when you have the kush houses that are selling kush, or the crack houses or whatever like that, shut those places down. Declare those places a nuisance. It's hard to defend against those when you have lined up all your evidence before you file it. And that's the county attorney's office ought to be in the forefront, working with the other agencies.
Great. So I do want to circle back sort of to the top of your remarks and talk a little bit more. You mentioned that you think one of the core focuses of the county attorney's office should be greater transparency. And I wonder if you can talk a little bit more about what your vision for transparency in the county attorney's office would look like.
I know that in the sheriff, when I was working with him, had problems in the jail. And it helped so much to be able to do on his website a hotline where people on the outside who thought that there was a problem on the inside and could say, you know, my son's not getting the medication he should get. Who do I call? It gets on the phone, you hold for 30 minutes, and there's no place to do it. They had just a hotline number that you would call into there that was checked every 30 minutes for 24 hours a day. And if you could see that it was an issue that needed to be addressed right away, you could address it right away. Well, it's the same way here. If there was something on the website, some way that the citizen could first of all know what the county attorney's office does. It doesn't even know what they do now, what they spend their money on, what cases that are out there that the county is a party to, which ones are being handled by the county attorney's office, which ones are being handled by outside counsels, what the outcome is. There's got to be a way that the citizens can see what's going on. And I think the open records, probably people don't use that much in the county attorney's office. The county attorney, you know, is the one who answers all the open records requests for everybody else, but the office itself, they ought to look at, and citizens need to know what their county's doing. You know, nobody likes to pay taxes. You know, you want your office to be more efficient, and you ought to demand that. And you'll never be able to demand it if you don't know what's going on.
Great. Well, thank you so much, Mr. Leitner, for taking the time to answer questions for our voters. We have about 3 minutes left in the time allotted for you, so I'd like to give you the opportunity to address here our voters at home and let them know why you think they should vote for you.
Well, I want to thank the League of Women Voters for giving me this opportunity. And I want the voters at home to know that, that if I'm elected as county attorney, I will always be available. You know, I will make every commissioner's court meeting, and I will be there, you know, making sure that my individuals are trained the way they need to be trained, that the money we have available is used for the betterment of the office, that if there is something that a portion of the county needs, you can call me and we will respond to your needs. I want every elected official to know if you have a need, you can call me and we will respond to those needs. And I will make myself available where you can come to me directly with those requests. You know, I will be there. I will make that office the best it can possibly be. I will ensure that the right people are placed in the right positions and that they are trained completely. And we will do your work, and you'll be our #1 priority. Thank you. That's why I'm asking for you to vote for Jim Leitner for county attorney.
Well, again, thank you so much, Mr. Leitner, for taking the time to speak with us tonight. We're going to take a quick break and reset, and we'll be back with the next candidate in just a moment. Welcome back to our conversation with the candidates for Harris County Attorney. You just heard from Mr. Jim Leitner here in person. Unfortunately, Mr. Vince Ryan couldn't join us here in person due to a scheduling conflict, but we have been able to get Mr. Ryan on the phone to answer questions for you. And let's go ahead and have him join us, please.
Hello, this is Vince Ryan, Harris County Attorney.
Hi, Mr. Ryan. Thank you so much for joining us tonight.
Thank you very much, Rita. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. So just briefly, let me tell you a little bit about Mr. Ryan before we launch into our questions. Vince Ryan has served as our Harris County Attorney since 2009. He is a Houston native and served in ROTC while attending the University of Houston, and upon graduating, he became an active duty officer in the U.S. Army. Mr. Ryan served tours in Europe, Vietnam, and Panama, and remained in the Army Reserves and retired as a lieutenant colonel. Mr. Ryan got his education in law from the University of Houston Law Center, and while practicing, he also pursued a graduate degree in history from Rice University, so quite the student. Vince first began working in the county attorney's office under Mike Driscoll and served as an assistant county attorney and first assistant county attorney from 1981 to 1987. He's also served 3 terms on Houston City Council and has been associated with several prominent Houston law firms. Vince is married to his lovely wife, Pam Rodriguez, and they have 3 sons. And he's also very involved in many community and nonprofit organizations. So there's Mr. Ryan in a nutshell. Let me first off ask you, can you talk a bit about the unique qualifications that you have for serving in the county attorney's office?
Well, I think, Rita, you actually outlined them with my experience. I spent 7 years in the county attorney's office under Mike Driscoll, who I still to this day, he was the best county attorney this county's ever had, and my goal is to be the second best county attorney we've ever had. Excuse me. That 7 years gave me, I think, the experience that I needed to then come into the office when I was elected in 2008, took office. Excuse me again. I'm allergic to dust, so excuse me if I cough.
Quite all right.
Took a little sip of water. Yeah.
Good.
Anyway, I'm choking up over my history. But so I spent that 7 years. Now, of course, I have almost 8 years again in the office of the Harris County Attorney, and so I think those 15 years give me good background, along with my other experience working at the City of Houston on City Council. One of the things you alluded to, I also served, of course, as one of the last American board members on the Panama Canal Commission. So got a lot of experience in public service.
Thank you. So related to the office in particular, I'm curious, do you believe that the Harris County Attorney's Office is sufficiently resourced? And if not, what additional resources would you like to see added?
Well, I think it's like any other law office. We can always use more resources. In fact, one of the challenges in the office has been back in 2010, the county went through the biggest budget cuts they've ever done, and every office was reduced budget by 20%. About a third of our attorneys do child protective services, so we chose not to reduce the budget in child protective services at all. So the rest of the office took a 30% cut. And only this year really we're back up to the same numbers we had before. And one of the things that I think is great about public service is that public servants don't do the job just because of the pay they get. They do it because they have a passion for what they do. And the people we were able, and we had to let go about 30 people when we had those budget cuts, even after adhering to a budget freeze over a period of months. So we lost overnight from the rest of office about 30%. And over the last 5 years, we've got back up to those numbers. But what I've seen is that the attorneys we have, the non-attorneys, the support staff have all stepped up and done a wonderful job. And now we're back up to the same numbers. So it's been a challenge, but it also, again, gave me a lot of, again, renewed confidence that we've got a great office in the Harris County Attorney's Office.
Great. Thank you for that. So my next question is has to do with priorities. And Harris County is a large, incredibly diverse county, one of the biggest in the country, in fact, with equally diverse needs. So as county attorney, what would your top 3 focus areas be in serving the county and why?
Well, one is the day-to-day responsibility of serving the other elected and appointed officials all through Harris County government. And when you have the hospital district, and we represent them too, Harris County government is as big as the city of Houston, but it is quite different with all the different elected and appointed officials. But we are the attorneys by law for every aspect of that government. So that's our day-to-day top priority. But again, our responsibility, and as we say in our motto, is of service to all according to law. And our clients are the people of Harris County by and through their elected and appointed representatives. So every day there's one issue or another where we have to balance the day-to-day representation of the other county officials with what the law allows to be done in something. So that's one of the fascinating things about the job, and we're really the only office in county government that spans every aspect of policy making, because we are the attorneys for the other elected and appointed officials. Commissioners Court has great authority through the budget, but they can't affect policy utilizing the budget except in very broad frameworks like the staffing again or funding certain special programs. So that's the day-to-day opportunity and responsibility is the first priority. The second is then looking at specific issues going on and seeing how we can best serve the people of Harris County in those specific kinds of instances. And without going into details, because we're actually representing various aspects of it, this current controversy about the property room on Precinct 4 Constable and some of the issues that we're looking at with the district attorney's office. Another big issue that's now in the forefront is the bail bond case, where we're representing various aspects of county government in trying to find a reasonable solution to that problem. So that's probably the second priority, those kinds of headline-grabbing cases that require a lot of response, a lot of legal work, both in-house, and those are the kinds of cases where we do go sometimes for outside counsel to aid us and to work with especially other elected officials. Then probably the third priority is when we focus on things that sometimes the public doesn't see except when there's some type of headline case, and that's environmental, for instance. We're very, very proactive in working with not just county government but other governmental units on environmental issues, because we have very broad authority in enforcing both state and federal law environmental issues. So we get very involved in that. Other kinds of things that we call community compliance, which ranges everything from deed restriction enforcement, which we have authority for, to closing down illegal businesses, gambling establishments, and others like massage parlors that are operating illegally. So that was kind of a long answer to a simple question.
Oh, thank you. No, thank you very much. So one of the things that we mentioned at the top of the hour is that oversight of mental health is a part of the Harris County Attorney Office's job. It's a significant issue for Harris County and for our state as a whole, obviously. And so I'm curious if you can talk a little bit about what role you think Harris County's Attorney's Office should play in helping to maximize the mental health resources that are at the county's disposal.
Well, actually, our direct role in it, we have one attorney who works full-time with what used to be MHMRA, Mental Health and Mental Retardation, and now is the Harris Center for IRR. So we have one attorney that does nothing but advises them and counsels and works with them every day. But probably our major role in mental health is working with law enforcement officials, especially the sheriff and the jail. And we have a lot of work we do and our attorneys do with the sheriff and with the other law enforcement agencies. Of course, Harris County has 9 very visible law enforcement agencies. That's the 8 constables and the sheriff. But the Harris County Attorney's Office, we have 9 investigators who are licensed peace officers. And the District Attorney's Office, I think, has 50 or 60 licensed peace officer investigators. So actually the county has 11 different law enforcement agencies, but the 9 major ones, the sheriff and 8 constables. So we're working constantly with them, advising them, working with them on mental health issues.
Great, thank you. And then you mentioned in your previous answer, and we talked about this at the top of the hour as well, child protective cases are also within the purview of the county attorney's office. I would like for you to talk to us a little bit about what you believe the county attorney's office does well when it comes to those representations and what you'd like to see improved.
Well, the technical part of the job is we represent the state agency and the local affiliate on child protective issues. But the real bottom line is, and our goal and responsibility is what's in the best interest of the child. And one of the things I tell people about county government especially, and it's very important in child protective issues, is with all the different elected officials, democracy by its very nature is not meant to be efficient. It's meant to lessen the ability of human weakness to exercise itself. And in child protective issues, you've got the state agency, you've got local caseworkers, you've got state caseworkers, depending on the case. You've got, if it's a criminal matter, you will have the district attorney's office involved. You've got then the issues, and our responsibility is to represent the state agency and the local affiliate in what's in the best interest of the child. If it gets to be a criminal matter, then it goes over the district attorney's side. So we have 20 attorneys who spend full time going to the juvenile courts and the family law courts and representing the local agencies. But there are times when our opinion might be different than those agencies, and we work very closely with them, seeking the best interests of the children involved.
Thank you. So I'm shifting gears a little bit, but immigration is just political lightning rod right now, which is not within the purview of the Harris County Attorney's Office. That's a federal issue. However, it is a reality of living in Harris County that we have a significant population of undocumented citizens. And I'm curious, what do you believe the County Attorney's Office should be doing to address the needs of undocumented citizens, and should it differ at all from the way that documented citizens are treated in Harris County?
Well, if you've noted when I said our ultimate clients are the people of Harris County,
right.
I use the word people because we do have, meaning the Harris County government has responsibilities to everybody who live within the boundary lines or travel within the boundary lines of Harris County. So there are some very obvious issues when someone is undocumented. Now, I personally, you mentioned that I went to graduate school at Rice. I did my master's thesis on the history of Mexico and petroleum. My father was born in Mexico. My wife is second-generation Hispanic from San Antonio, and I was a foreign area specialist for Latin America in the Army Reserve, so I've got a broad background in Latin America. And the issues of immigration, I'm hopeful, and they're national issues. We have to live with the reality that's here in Harris County. And one of the issues, too, that is quite challenging at times, because Houston is the biggest unzoned city in America. You have very nice neighborhoods that have apartment complexes and strip shopping centers everywhere, and often the issues of immigration will overlap the very nicest parts of town, too. So our job is primarily to advise the sheriff and constables on issues dealing with their law enforcement functions, but primarily when in question, those people get treated as anybody else by Harris County government.
Right,
except in law enforcement issues. And again, sometimes the sheriff does, because of serious criminal offenses, does work then with the federal government, and we are part of what's called the 287G program, where the sheriff actually works with the federal government on serious offenders who are already in jail.
Great, thank you. So shifting gears once again,
Okay.
Every county has challenges collecting the monies that it's owed, and Harris County being as large and dispersed as it is, certainly this is a problem when you're talking about liens, judgments, levies. My question for you is, should collection matters be a high priority for the county attorney's office, and how should they be tackled if so?
Well, it is a high priority in our office, and we have a very active group of attorneys and non-attorneys who do a wide range of collections. Now, of course, the county also, for delinquent taxes, has a contract with Linebarger Goggin, the very, very big delinquent tax collection firm that also does a lot of collections for other government entities throughout Harris County, and includes the city of Houston. So we're involved with that and work with Linebarger on delinquent taxes, and then we focus on these other collections for fees and fines, for instance, There's different types of fees that are levied when people want to do certain things, especially out in the county. For instance, certain types of building fees they've got to pay, and engineering fees and other kinds of things. And also, we work very closely with the Justice of the Peace offices, and there are 16 JPs in Harris County on the collection of fees and fines sometimes with each of their offices. So we have had a history of collecting in the millions of dollars ourselves, apart from the delinquent tax collection that's done by the private firms.
Right. Thank you. So one topic that we hear talked about at all levels of government, it's certainly a topic that's discussed in Houston right now, is transparency. And so I'm curious if you would tell the voters what your vision for transparency between County Attorney's Office and the citizens of Harris County looks like.
Well, I think if anybody wants, they can certainly go to our website, and the County Attorney's Office website is easily accessible, and all you got to do is go to www.harriscountyattorney, one word, harriscountyattorney.net, and you'll see a lot about our office and about what the office is doing and the various aspects of our office. And also you can go to that website if you've got a complaint. For instance, we don't do a whole lot inside city limits, but we can. Something as simple as deed restriction. Or we have another program we call community compliance that deals with everything from deed restrictions to shutting down these criminal enterprises. And you can go on that website and actually find the contact point and actually do reporting issues if you see them, although it's better to contact us directly if there's some issue like that. So the website is a pretty, I think, good tool for the public to use to see what we do and who to contact in our office. Or you can just call our main number, and the receptionist will find somebody in the office who can address the issue. Or if it's an issue that better dealt with at the city level or the state level or the federal level, we can also help guide people to the right public official who can help them with that particular problem.
Thank you. So you already alluded to my next question in one of your previous answers, but as I mentioned to the audience at the top of the hour, one of the county attorney's responsibilities is a wide range of civil enforcement actions, and those are everything from environmental issues to shutting down illegal enterprises and a lot of things in between. I'm curious, as county attorney, what kinds of enforcement actions do you think should be the highest priorities?
Well, you named them. Anything from a criminal enterprise. For instance, I mentioned earlier that the city of Houston is the biggest unzoned city in America. And I'm at an event in Bel Air, which is a enclave city within the boundary lines virtually of the city of Houston. And it's a classic example. I'm at a beautiful home here in Bel Air, but within not that long of a walk even, certainly a bicycle ride, to parts of Bel Air that have rundown apartment complexes and strip shopping centers. So we think it's very important to work with the communities, both the other cities throughout Harris County and civic and community groups, if there is a problem. And I use the example of that strip shopping center where that flashing red light says massage at midnight. Well, we would hope that only meant that, but often it means something else. And bingo parlors and other gambling establishments have to adhere to very strict rules, and most are illegal, of course, except some of these eight-liners, and then they have to adhere to very strict rules. So especially in our community, it's very important that people obey the rules of utilization of property. And so we've become very involved in that, and actually reached out, and we have what we call 3 contracts with development districts, with the management districts, for additional funding. So we have 3 attorneys who do nothing but that kind of thing, and probably another 3 attorneys who spend substantial parts of their time doing that.
Thank you. So my next question is a little bit of a drill down on one of these kinds of enforcement actions. I mentioned earlier on in the hour, the county attorney is the civil attorney for Harris County. However, we do have significant issues around drug trafficking, and in particular, human trafficking in Harris County is a major, major issue. So I'm curious, do you believe there's a role for a county attorney in tackling these illegal enterprises? And if so, can you talk about what that role looks like?
Oh, in fact, we're very involved in those issues. In human trafficking, we've actually been working with both the federal level and other local officials on that issue since my first days in office. Because again, for instance, using again the unfortunate example of that massage parlor that has a flashing red light at midnight that isn't really just doing that. Well, often the people working there are here undocumented, often are even brought here and forced into that kind of business. So one of the disadvantages being the most important port, I think, in America, and certainly the huge port we are, is that we are a nexus for human trafficking. So we've been very involved in working with law enforcement and those attorney positions we've got that are compliance. We use compliance because it's kind of a overall word, but we spend quite a bit of time working with law enforcement on human trafficking and issues dealing with that kind of thing.
Great, thank you.
And again, we have the authority to shut down businesses, to seize property, to seize money, and we have been doing quite a bit. The Kush epidemic is a good example. We've worked very closely with the city of Houston in not only shutting down businesses, but getting huge money damages from businesses that have been selling Kush.
Right. Thank you. So now you mentioned in one of your previous answers an example of when the Houston County Attorney's Office augments their own resources by relying on outside counsel to handle particular tasks. Can you talk about what you think the role is of outside counsel in assisting the county attorney's office? And as county attorney, how would you make decisions about what to keep in-house and what to send to outside counsel?
Well, we do it in two different situations, and we did this, and it has historically been done in the county attorney's office. One is when there's special expertise necessary. For instance, in certain types of environmental cases, I'll use an example. There are some attorneys who have that expertise that nowhere in the world would we, in our group of environmental attorneys, really have that expertise. Also, sometimes we use outside counsel when we're, for instance, I'll use the San Jacinto waste pits. The two defendants, Waste Management and McGinnis Paper, are huge corporations. Waste Management, I think, is the biggest waste management company in the country. So when you go after them on pollution matters, that's the San Jacinto waste pit issues. When you go after them, they have the wherewithal to outspend you. Again, we have 105 attorneys in our office, and we have a budget that is quite substantial. But compared to what a waste management spend for attorneys, it's just a drop in the bucket. So that's one area where we use outside counsel contingent fees, so they only get paid if we get recoveries. The second is when we have sometimes a really highly specialized kind of situation, which sometimes might even be an engineering matter, but most often is when there's some sort of potential conflict, because while we represent every elected official and appointed official and employee of Harris County, sometimes you need to bring in other attorneys, and the most recent one's been this bail bond case. While the county is the initial defendant, the real issues are how do we reform the bail bond system. So the 16 county court of law judges are involved in those decisions. They're the decision makers, but again, there's 16 different judges. So we requested, and the county's got a system of checks and balances, and one of which applies when you're dealing with outside counsel, is we recommend outside counsel, but the commissioner's court's got to approve it. And when they're representing, like in the case of these 16 judges, the judges have to approve that those people will be representing them. Now, they don't have to prove that the county attorney represents them. But if we want to make any progress, we need to have the buy-in of those judges. So that's been another kind of case that you've been seeing in the media because of the different conflicting issues that might apply in that case as we move forward with it.
Thank you so much.
In relationship to our total budget and the total number of people, we use relatively few outside attorneys.
Thank you so much, Mr. Ryan. We're getting very close to the end of our time together. You have about 3 minutes. If you would like to take that time just to talk to the voters listening at home about why you would like for them to reelect you.
Well, one is, as I've said earlier in our interview, is I'm completing my 15th year in the county attorney's office. I've spent a lot of time at the federal level, at the city of Houston, and actually it is a honor every day to be the Harris County attorney and be able to impact the quality of life and the quality of services that the county provides to the people of Harris County each and every day. It sometimes is a very demanding job. It's sometimes very hectic, but it's also a tremendously rewarding job to be of service to all according to the law and working with all these different elected and appointed officials, employees in Harris County government, which I think does a very good job across the board, whether it's flood control, whether it's toll roads, whether it's the day-to-day maintenance of parks, road and bridges the county's involved in, or as we work with other elected officials like the district clerk and the county clerk, the sheriff, the 8 constables. So every day is a different kind of day. Every day is a different type of challenge, but it is a invigorating kind of way for a public servant like me to spend his time. And I hope that the people of Harris County return me to office, give me another 4 years to be of service to them and to the other elected and appointed officials in county government.
Thank you so much, Mr. Ryan, and thank you for taking the time out of what I know is a very busy election season to speak with us and help us to educate the voters at home on your positions. And I know that you were double scheduled tonight. We'll let you get back to your other event, but
Okay,
again,
Rita,
thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you very much for the opportunity to talk.
Absolutely. Have a good evening.
You too.
So for those of you watching at home, thank you so much for spending your evening with us, getting to know the candidates for county attorney. Just for your information, if you missed any portion of this or you want to watch it again later, this video will be published on Houston Media Sources YouTube channel as well as the League of Women Voters of Houston's Vimeo channel in a couple of days. And if you missed the conversation last week with the candidates for Harris County Department of Education Board of Trustees, you can also find that video in our library. We have a number of other races that are coming up in the coming weeks. Next week, as I mentioned, we have a very exciting panel of experts here to talk to us about demystifying the judicial races that are going to be on our ballot in November. The week after that, we'll have our conversation with the candidates for district attorney. And then after that, we'll have conversations with the candidates for Harris County Sheriff, as well as the Harris County Tax Assessor and Collector. So stay tuned and help yourself get educated for these races that are coming up in Harris County. Of course, you can also find information about all of the races that are going to be on your ballot just in a couple of weeks. We're still collecting information. If you go to our website, which is www.vote411.org, you can actually search for your ballot by zip code, and it'll tell you not only the races on your ballot, but all the information that the League of Women Voters has collected on the various candidates on that ballot. You can also find additional events and information about the League of Women Voters of Houston at lwvhouston.org. On behalf of the League of Women Voters of Houston Education Fund, I'm Rita Hicks. Thank you so much for joining us. Have a good night.